Back in 2011, Terry Rozier infamously tweeted, "Osama should have hooped instead of trying to kill people because he tall as hell." And funny enough, that wasn't actually the first time that Terry Rozier and Osama bin Laden have been linked together, because just 1 year earlier, on season 6, episode 25 of The Office, Michael Scott said this.
"And if I had a gun with 2 bullets and I was in a room with Hitler, bin Laden, and
Terry Rozier,
I would shoot
Terry Rozier
twice."
So in today's video, we're gonna do just that. And I don't mean kill Terry Rozier, of course, because this is just basketball and I don't condone violence at all. But we are gonna eliminate Terry Rozier from the Miami Heat's roster. And today we're gonna do that by looking at some trade packages that I cooked up myself. We're not really gonna get into the typical ones that we've been seeing for the last few weeks circulating all over social media, because of course you had the big story that got a lot of Heat fans mad, where apparently they turned down Marcus Smart for Terry Rozier because the Heat weren't sure if Marcus Smart was an upgrade. That's how the initial aggregated report came out. Of course, I knew that's not exactly how it went. I was assuming the Washington Wizards wanted picks in addition to Terry Rozier, which is what Anthony Chang ended up confirming. And honestly, I'm glad that the Heat did not decide to attach picks to Terry Rozier just to get Marcus Smart, because as I tweeted out a few days ago, at @AnthonyD_Heat if you want to follow me, but I said I agree with Miami because I didn't think it was smart to trade Rozier and draft capital for any of the past third prime guys like Vucevic, Marcus Smart, DeMar DeRozan. There's a few other guys that we heard about. And my main reasoning was I don't think there's any point in losing more assets for aging non-needle movers, because the Heat need picks. We barely have any picks. I don't even care if we get more second round picks. The Heat should be acquiring those type of assets, because those can be the things that pushes a trade over the edge, is maybe having some of those second round picks. And as a Heat team that's probably not going to be any good next year with or without Vucevic or Marcus Smart or DeMar DeRozan, it doesn't make sense to give up Rozier's expiring contract in addition to picks just for a guy who's a non-needle mover and not a part of your future. So I did agree with the Miami Heat for not going after Marcus Smart, but at the same time, I would like Terry Rozier off the roster. That's why I got into the trade machine today, spent quite a while, and tried to cook up a couple of trades that I do think work. And after all my time in the trade machine today, I was really only able to find 2 trades that I think are somewhat plausible. They're not great, definitely not even likely, but you can make an argument at the very least that every team involved could agree. Because, of course, it was very difficult to find some trades for Terry Rozier, because he's a pretty bad basketball player who's making $26 million a year, who's also happens to be under federal investigation. So Terry Rozier does not have a lot of value as a player, but where he does have value is as a pretty big expiring contract. So we'll try to use that to the Miami Heat's advantage. Like in this first trade I have here, where the Miami Heat receive Kyle Kuzma and a 2027 first-round pick from the Milwaukee Bucks in exchange for Terry Rozier and 2 second-round picks. Now, we know that the Bucks just got Kuzma last year. They traded Chris Middleton, one of their franchise cornerstones, a guy that helped the team win their first championship, a fan favorite. They traded that guy. AJ Lawson, who was just their first round pick the year prior. They picked him 23 overall in 2024. And the Bucks traded a first round pick swap for Kyle Kuzma and a second round pick. That's the trade that the Bucks did a year ago. Of course, in hindsight, it was an awful trade because they let go of Chris Middleton, who, of course, we just said how much the fans love, but he was also an expiring contract, and they traded that for Kyle Kuzma, who still has a couple of more years left. He's going to make $22 million this year and $20 million next year at the age of 31 years old. And he hasn't been great for Milwaukee thus far. Last season as a whole, he did average 15 points per game, but it wasn't very efficient. He shot 31% from 3, which is not good at all. He wasn't a good defender. He had as many assists to turnovers. And in the playoffs, it got even worse. For Milwaukee, he only averaged 6 points per game on 34% shooting from the field and a nasty 20% shooting from 3, which those numbers are still somehow better than what Terry Rozier did last year, but that's not a super high bar. Point is, I know Bucks fans don't love Kyle Kuzma. They regret the trade, and they would love to get off of him. Yes, attaching a first-round pick to do it is a lot, but you have to remember that the Bucks are desperate. Their offseason is pretty much done. They added Miles Turner, which was a good pickup, but nothing else. And then just to afford Miles Turner, they had to waive and stretch Damian Lillard, which means that they'll be paying Dame over $20 million for the next 5 seasons. That's dead money. $20+ million of dead money for 5 seasons. That was a desperate move. Of course, it's starting to seem like Giannis may actually stay this season, but next year could be the year where he's out because he's going to demand improvements, and it's going to be near impossible again for the Bucks to make any improvements next offseason because they still got Giannis on big money. You're still going to have Turner on big money. You're going to have Dame's dead money, and then Kuzma is also going to be making $20 million. But in this deal, they're going to be getting Terry Rozier's expiring contract, which means that he would be off the books next offseason. The Bucks will be more desperate than ever to keep Giannis, meaning they will be willing to do anything. It was absolutely crazy when they stretched Dame. Do y'all remember reading that notification? I know I was shook. Most people were too. So maybe the Bucks will also be willing to do something crazy, like attach a first-round pick to get off of Kyle Kuzma. And in this trade, I did also have them receiving 2 second-round picks from the Heat just to incentivize them a little bit more. Plus, Terry Rozier, he low-key might play for them, too, because their point guard rotation right now is like Kevin Porter Jr., Cole Anthony, and Ryan Rollins. I don't think any of those guys are bad players. I think Ryan Rollins could be a nice young get for them, too. Had a pretty decent summer league, but they're not great. And Terry Rozier certainly has no chance of playing for the Heat, not with Davion Mitchell and Kasper Siakachonis, now Norman Powell, so maybe he can get some run for the Bucks this season. As far as the Miami Heat side of things on this trade, Kyle Kuzma does not excite me at all. So if you've already left a comment saying, oh, why do you want Kyle Kuzma? I don't. Maybe a few years ago when he was shooting better, he was rebounding better, and we thought that he could be a nice stretch forward next to Bam. But right now, I certainly don't love him. I mean, the Heat still need some backup forward depth, so he probably would play. I just don't think he's a great player. But the main reason you're doing this trade is for that 2027 first-round pick, which is more valuable a pick to have than in any other year, because having that 2027 pick will allow the Heat to go from 2 tradable first-round picks to 4 tradable first-round picks. And that's because of the Stepien rule. Having that 2027 pick allows them to now trade 26, 28, 30, and 32. We've talked about that in the past, and maybe I'll do a full video on that at some point. But yeah, essentially gives the Heat 2 extra first-round picks to trade, which would, of course, do wonders for their arsenal the next time it comes to a star wanting out and coming to Miami. And while Miami would have more cap space next year as of right now, the way things stand with Terry Rozier and Norman Powell, because both those guys are expiring, you would still have Andrew Wiggins on the books until 2027, which is shaping up to be the better free agency anyways. I don't expect 2026 to be anything too crazy. So if the Heat were to get Kyle Kuzma, I don't think having that extra year's salary is worst case scenario, because it's only one more year, and then him and Wiggins would come off the books in 2027, and then the Heat would really have a ton of cap space to work with in that potentially exciting offseason. Now, the second and final trade that I cooked up was a way more wild one, and it was a 3-team deal in which the Miami Heat received DeMar DeRozan, Buddy Hield, Guy Santos, Trace Jackson Davis, Isaac Jones, and 2 second-round picks from the Kings. The Sacramento Kings are then receiving Terry Rozier and Jonathan Kuminga via sign and trade from the Golden State Warriors, who will be receiving Norman Powell from the Miami Heat. Before you call me crazy, let me break it down to you. We'll start with the Kings side of things, where they're basically trading DeMar DeRozan and 2 second-round picks for Jonathan Kuminga. I think that's excellent value. We know that the Kings want Jonathan Kuminga. We know that their plan is to go more young with their core of now Devin Carter, unless they trade him too, which is what the rumors have been. I don't understand it. But as of right now, they got Devin Carter, nice young player. They still have Keon Ellis and Keegan Murray, two guys they came out and said are untouchable for Jonathan Kuminga, as they should be. Those are nice young players. And then, of course, in this most recent draft, they took Nick Clifford, Maxime Reynaud, two guys who had really good summer leagues as well, and I think they'll be pretty decent players in this league. So the Kings have a nice young core with Kuminga. They don't need DeMar DeRozan and his 2 years left on his salary, where in the final season he'll be 37 years old. They just don't need him. And then on top of that, they are getting Terry Rozier, who, of course, is an expiring contract, so they can move on from his money next offseason. This is a good deal for the Kings. For the Warriors side of things, we know that they are done with Jonathan Kuminga. Every day you get more and more reportings that's basically confirmed he's not going back to Golden State. There has been some trade offers for sign-in trade packages, to get Kuminga out of there. The Kings specifically, it has been reported that they offered a heavily protected first-round pick or Devin Carter in some seconds. There's been some combinations out there. We also heard some reported trades from the Suns in which they were willing to offer Royce O'Neal, Nick Richards, and some second-round picks. So Royce O'Neal, Nick Richards, those are decent role players, and I think that's what the Warriors would want, because I could see them not wanting the Kings' initial package, right? Because what are the Warriors going to do with some second-round picks in the future? What are they going to do with Devin Carter? Like, the Warriors have an older team. They got Jimmy Butler, Draymond, and Steph Curry. That's their core. It's an older core that's trying to win right now. They don't want those future assets and young players. So yes, while that package from the Suns of Royce O'Neal and Nick Richards could help, I think Norman Powell is a hell of a better player. I think he would be absolutely perfect in their system. And of course, you're talking about a guy who probably should have made the All-Star team last year, which is definitely a big step above, any of the other rotation pieces that any other team was offering. Because the Warriors now, they could walk into next season with a lineup of Steph Curry, Norman Powell, Jimmy Butler, Draymond Green, and Quentin Post, or maybe they get another center. It's also been rumored that once they figure out the whole Kuminga situation, they can then move forward to step 2 of their offseason, which I'm sure would involve finding a big man. But, regardless of that, you still got a really, really nice first 4. And of course, they are losing Kuminga and Buddy Hield, 2 guys that were in their rotation next year, but you got to look at Kuminga as gone because that's already pretty much set in stone. And then, yeah, Hield was okay for them last year, but I think Norman Powell was a massive upgrade. He was much more efficient. I think he's much more versatile, and I just think he'll be a better piece on their team, no doubt about it. So you're telling me that the Warriors are able to get an upgrade like Norman Powell for no picks involved? I think it's a home run trade for the Warriors too. I really, really do. And then we go to the Miami Heat side of things, where most importantly, you get in the picks. You're getting 2 second-round picks. There's been a lot of trade packages about DeMar DeRozan coming to the Miami Heat, and in all of those packages, the Heat are giving up picks. So to be able to acquire him and picks, I think it's a home run trade for the Miami Heat too. I know Heat fans love Norman Powell, as do I, even though he hasn't actually suited up for us yet, but he's an expiring contract. He might not re-sign anyways, or the Heat may have to overpay to keep him. So at least this way you are getting some value for him. And even when we traded for Powell, there was a lot of Heat fans that made an interesting statement. They said, okay, we got Powell. He's a good player. Maybe we can now flip him at the deadline for additional assets. And I never loved that mindset, just because if Powell could have went for picks, he would have went for picks now. And obviously the Heat were able to trade him without getting picks. So to assume that the Heat could now trade him for picks at the deadline, that's a big assumption. It's possible, because maybe there's a team at the deadline who thinks they're close to a championship, thinks Norman Powell could put them over the top. So it's possible, but we don't know for sure. Where if the Heat could pull off a trade like this, it would allow Miami to get that draft capital for Norman Powell. They'd get 2 first-round picks right now, and they would get 2 productive players in DeMar DeRozan and Buddy Hield. So that he could still field an interesting roster of Hero, DeRozan, Wiggins, Bam, and Ware. You'd have Davion and Buddy Hield as your guards off the bench. That's a decent team. Not a great one. Certainly not a contender or anything like that. But just like Kuzma, DeMar DeRozan expires in 2027 with Andrew Wiggins. So you'd have that cap space open up in 27. And then now you'd have some additional picks to make some more moves. Yes, Buddy Hield does have an extra year. He doesn't come off the books until 2028. But it's only for $10 million, which is a player option, by the way. I'm assuming he would accept that player option, but that's fine. You have an extra $10 million on the books for 2028. Not a big deal. I don't think that's going to stop you from going after Luka or whatever other big free agent whale is potentially available. Then, of course, we got to address some of the salary filler here. The Heat are literally taking in, 5 players, and they're sending out 2. So they would have to waive at least one of these guys. I don't think it'd be Trace Jackson Davis, though. I actually think he could play for the Heat. Not super tall, but he is pretty athletic for his size. And I think he could play some backup big minutes for the Heat. But those guys in this trade are mostly just salary filler. But anyways, that's really all I got to say for this video. So let me know if you think either of these trades is realistic. Let me know if you don't like them. Why? Who do you think says no? And if you have some better trade ideas for Terry Rozier without giving up picks, let me know, because I'd be glad to hear it. And maybe I'll make another video on what y'all think. Make sure y'all like the video and subscribe, because your support is greatly appreciated. I'll see y'all in the next video. Peace out, everyone.
Look, pull up in your city, tryna get that dead face. Do it on my own, I don't need no dead weight. Had to kill him off, yeah, I need a head space. You know this homegrown bitch don't offend me.